So, very good evening to all, and I welcome you all to this webinar conducted by the committee. And the chairman, CA Charanjot Singh Nanda, is among us. And I think whatever I say, I'm short of words to, introduce him. But just to introduce him, I would say that Nanda sir is presently the Central Council member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. He's the chairman of the Digital Accounting and Insurance Board, ICAI, Committee on Financial Markets and Investor Protection, and Committee on Information Technology of South Asian Federation of Accountants. So he's the vice chairman of the Board of Internal Audit at Management Accounting, and he's chairman, vice chairman, and member of various committees. And if I start taking the name, I think we will not be able to listen to the speakers. So he's, like chairman and vice chairman of so many committees, and he has been various presentation and chaired session on various platforms. He's a wonderful speaker, and whenever the audience are in front of him and when he speaks, everyone is glued. So I really request Nanda sir to share your few words and open the session. Nanda sir, please, I welcome you and invite you to introduce and just say a few words to everyone present. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Triveni ji. CS Sarabjit Singh, Head Internal Audit, Indus Towers Limited. C. Ranjit Singh, who takes care of forensic investigations in Indus Tower. Amit Gupta, the Secretary, the entire DAP team, Madam Triveni Sehgal, who's from Amritsar and who's moderating this wonderful program, and all who have joined from all SAFA countries, 8 countries, India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Maldives, who have come here to go home overnight. Ladies and gentlemen, over the years, forensic investigations is gaining ground day by day. Audits are coming down. You would appreciate that internationally, audit is a luxury. In smaller developing countries, audit is, which is considered very important for the companies to do, but in larger countries, developed countries, audit is a matter of choice, or by regulation, if it is done, it is too expensive. And now when you come onto the value add system, forensic investigations, internal audits are some things that will have large of value in terms of putting things in the right perspective. So ladies and gentlemen, I truly welcome you to this great session. I want to tell you that your institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, is the first in the world to come out with 23 forensic standards. We promulgated that at our own institutes under the aegis of DAP, Digital Accounting and Insurance Board. And the entire world looks upon us for guidance on forensic standards. One more good news to you. We are making these standards mandatory from 1st July 2023. And therefore, a marathon meeting is being held. I am in Mumbai today, and tomorrow and day after, the entire guidance note related to all these standards would be made final. After that, we'll be able to effectively put at the right parlance how investigations could change the entire landscape of the accounting profession. I want to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it is a niche area and corporate espionage is more than 60% in India. So put them in right perspective, undertake forensic investigations and be guided by the forensic standards so that when it goes to the ultimate court of prosecution, the cases do not fall apart, but people who have conducted the heinous crime or who have done white collar crimes with respect to frauds are ultimately booked. One more thing I would like to tell you, if you want to make forensic as your career, please go deeply and understand the Indian Evidence Act 1872. What evidence is an admissible evidence? What evidence is a non-admissible evidence? What evidence is circumstantial evidences? You need to know them, understand them, and put them in the right perspective. We have two of the very revered speakers, Sarabjit ji and Ranjit ji, and therefore I will not speak much. I see that all 8 countries people are joined together to understand, to see how they can work and create value and worth in their professional avenues and endeavors. So ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all and wish this conference a great success. Thank you so much. Over to Triveni ji for her further proceedings. Triveni ji, the dais is all yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. And I think you are, I mean, no words to praise you because you are a wonderful speaker. Everywhere you come, sir, the whole crowd wants really to have words from you. So thank you so much for giving us beautiful, wonderful words. Being in Mumbai, you are delivering so much. And the laborious work you do, thank you so much from all the participants. And I really thank you. So coming to next, of course, sir has briefed out that today we are going for the forensic audit webinar, and we have two wonderful and renowned speakers among us. And first of all, I would invite CS Sarabjit Singh, who is here to enlighten us, to give us more knowledge about the forensic audit. Just to give a little introduction about Sir CS Sarabjit Singh, he has 20 plus years of experience in managing all aspects of risk management, auditing, cybersecurity, fraud investigation, and management assurance. Experience with global organization and big four consulting firm in managing large scale, result oriented business and part of surpassing the growth target. So, sir, I invite you, please share your wonderful experience with all the participants because everyone is really eagerly waiting to have the word of wisdom from you. So thank you so much and I invite you to start your presentation.
Thanks, Shivani. I hope the presentation is visible to all.
Very much, Sarabjit, very much visible. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thanks Triveni and Charanjot Singh for providing us this opportunity to talk to people within our continent. It's always great to share the knowledge and share our experience with our counters. I'm Sarabjit. I'm part of Indus Towers Limited. We're a listed company in India. It's around 30,000 crore of turnover, having operations in all the parts of hooks and corners of the country. We are having shareholders like Airtel and Vodafone as our primary customer as well, and we also serve Jio. We are basically to the passive telecom service provider to the operators, which means the towers which are there, which radiates and gives you the signals, mostly are controlled and governed by us in the country. I'm the Chief of Internal Audit and Assurance at Indus Towers. I have close to 20 years of experience, and before Indus, I was part of Deloitte in their enterprise management services. Over here, we have a separate function or vertical, which is the ombudsman vertical, which is also helped to me by Ranjit Singh, and you will hear from him. Today, what we wanted to cover is two pieces. One, how the fraud governance work in a large organization. And then in case any fraud which occurs, what kind of investigations which you can do, basically focusing on forensic side of it. Considering that today the world has moved to digitalization and everything is online, and there's very, very less paperwork. So how to do that forensic investigation, we'll try to cover that in detail. You can put your questions if you have any during this discussion in the chat box. I will try to answer, and I'll request Triveni to pick those questions, and after my session, I'll try to answer that. And after Ranjit's completion of the session, we'll also try to cover whatever questions you may have. I will spend 20 to 25 minutes on governance, and then I'll hand it over to Ranjit, who will spend 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes on investigation, and then we'll keep half an hour in the end for any questions and clarifications you may have. In most of the organization, you feel that there should be a governance oversight and an architecture which should be established. By the governance oversight, there are different line of defense which should be established. And if I take very simple example from internal audit perspective, and if people understand the financial part of it, so generally you have a first line of defense, which means in case something goes wrong, who will be able to detect that. So that's first piece is the process owners or the functionaries themselves. And globally, 90% of the things are detected by the process owner themselves, any mistakes which are going out from the system. The second line of defense is generally the controllership within the company, which means like a revenue assurance function or a finance controllers who review and check whether the things which are going in the financial statements or in the operational statements are correct or not. Third line of defense is generally the internal audit, which comes and do the audit based on sampling, in checking whether things which have been booked by the company, the process which are there are adequately followed or not. So 90% first line of defense take care of, 25% of leftover is taken care by second line of defense, and out of leftover 10 to 20% things are detected by the internal auditor. There are still certain underlying things which which remains undetected and goes out of the system, which is actually the cost of running the business. The fourth line of defense generally is the statutory auditors, which comes and do the audit for the financial statement. So that is from the internal audit governance thing, which generally we are aware, and most of us, if we understand this audit function, must have seen, read, or gone through. I will try to put that in the same structure for fraud as well. That in a large organization, how can we create this line of defense within the organization to make sure that any fraud which may be happening or may get undetected can be taken care of and unearthed. So first and foremost is the entity level control, which means policy at the top. A right fraud risk management policy, a right fraud prevention unit within the organization to make sure that the company's objective, the company's underlying culture is known to everyone. This policy covers aspect not only about what will be done in case something goes wrong, but also covers who is governing it, what are the processes, what will be done in case any fraud has happened, who needs to be reported, what are the steering committees in the organization who will take this forward in case anything has happened. Now, the fraud prevention unit basically is the investigation function, which should be independent of the management, and generally the fraud prevention unit should be established, which should be independently reported to the audit committee and the board. And this person, whoever is handling this fraud prevention, should be independent from day-to-day operations and the management. Most of this fraud prevention unit can be in-house, or it can be outsourced also to other firms. And this takes care of any complaints which comes through various channels to this prevention unit, and then the investigation and other piece have been taken care of. This also gave, from the cultural fabric of the company, a very, very good confidence to the people on the ground that they can report anything if they feel that something is going wrong. If it is part of the management, if the person is within the management team itself, you will find that people will not get open up and tell and give the whistleblower kind of thing to the organization. This independence also gives confidence to the entire ecosystem of the company, which means we have our partners, we have vendors, we have customers, you might have associates and third parties working in the organization. So once you have an independent person, if something is going wrong, the person also feels very confident that I can report to this person and he will be able to take care of it in most independent way. So this is the first and foremost fabric which needs to be established within the organization. At the top, our right fraud risk management policy and an independent fraud prevention unit, properly equipped with the budgets and the team structure to undertake anything which is required from the fraud prevention, detection, monitoring perspective. Then we can split this governance into three pieces. One, the prevention, how we can prevent any fraud happening in the organization. Second is the detection model, that in case something has happened, and then by doing various experts, how can we detect it? And third, of course, is the monitoring piece and the investigation piece which comes out, which means that somebody has complained and how that investigation should happen, how we need to conclude it, and how we need to respond it back to the person who has done it. Now, from prevention perspective, the first and foremost is having a code of conduct within the organization, which means that what organization feels about processes, what organization feels about the controls, what is right, what is wrong, what are do's and don'ts for the organization. So this gives a complete perspective to the person who has joined the organization as an employee or who is the third party working with the organization. This code of conduct also clarifies very, very clearly what are the expected behavior of an individual. They also gives what are the legal they also mitigate the legal and compliance risk for the company. It also gives a lot of clarity in terms of people that what are the steps needs to be followed, and it also builds up the trust within the company. Now, if this code of conduct is very, very clear and there is no lacuna in terms of what is right, what is wrong, it gives clarity to the people who are operating within the companies or operating with the companies in terms of that this is the way this organization works and these are the protocols which needs to be followed. This code of conduct also gives repercussions that in case any fraud has happened, in case anything wrong has been done, what would be the legal stand of the company, whether they will go for FIR, whether they will ask for the employee to leave the organization, whether the person would be removed from the system, and so on and so forth. So all those scenarios are built up. So this is the first step in terms of putting the prevention model within the company. Second is the fraud risk assessment. The fraud risk assessment basically is a process which tells what are the potential frauds which can be there in a particular function or in a particular organization. This identifies, so let's take an example that you have a purchase function. So fraud risk assessment will give you, which should be done, which will give you what kind of different scenarios are there in that purchase function, which are susceptible to the fraud, where the things can go wrong, where somebody can do an integrity issue, like whether bringing the right partners on board, which are independent of the management, giving the right rate for the particular contract or particular value, which can be another fraud risk control which can be built up. So those framework or assessment needs to be done function wise and a process wise for entire organization. This assessment also gives what are the high fraud risk controls or high fraud risk areas which management should focus. What are the medium fraud risks which can be monitored but can be left out, and what are the low fraud risks which organization can live in depending on its risk appetite. Now, this particular fraud risk assessment can be made on likelihood and impact of each fraud risk, which means that in case something goes wrong, what would be the impact of that fraud and what is likelihood of that fraud happening in the organization. So it's basically a matrix of 3 by 3, if you see, which gives you what are high likelihood, high impact items, what are low likelihood but high impact items, and that way 2 by 2 matrix or a 3 by 3 matrix can be created, which gives snapshots to the management that these are the high risk fraud which needs to be monitored. Now, once these high risk frauds are identified through this exercise, it's very good way of giving it to the internal audit team or giving it to the management to make sure that as part of their routine check, they do these kind of assessment and testing. These are also built in within the governance mechanism, which means if organization have a robust second line of defense, a controllership thing, these controls can be given to them to do a regular testing. Also, most of the organizations have this IFC framework, which is internal financial controls, or ICOFAR framework, or a SOX framework for many companies. These fraud risk controls should also be part of that thing, which should be validated and complied by the function themselves on quarterly basis, regularly audited by the internal audit to make sure that things are in the right direction. So very, very important from the prevention side of it on the fraud risk assessment. Third is the due diligence. So due diligence basically is of the stakeholders. It is basically covering the employees, covering the partners who are coming into the ecosystem, and whosoever company wants to deal it. Why due diligence is important? I think this helps to identify the potential risk and protect the company's reputation and assets. Very, very important. Whether you are dealing with right partner, whether his reputation in the market is right, whether the employee which you are bringing to the organization has a right background, right education, and is not involved in any criminal, police, and all those kind of activities. It also to prevent an organization to involve with the individual or entities which may harm the organization's reputation in the long run. And also it very, very helps in regulatory compliances. Let's take an example that we are bringing a partner on board and if you're not doing his background validation, and that partner is habitual of defaulting in PF for the employees, or ES, or not giving minimum salaries to their employees. So if you are engaging with that kind of a partner, the risk is that your company might also fall into that bucket, that employees who have been associated with you on partners' behalf are not getting the right salary. So these kind of due diligence, if you do, you get a right decision whether this partner or employee I should go ahead and engage it or not. And this also, I think, gives very confidence to the shareholders, to the employees, to the management, and taking a cautious decision that to whom we are dealing with. In a large organization, at times it happens that there are too many partners or too many vendors to deal with. Considering the size and scale of the organization, the decision can be taken that what kind of partners or vendors that due diligence should be done, at what frequency it can be done, and should we repeat it or not. So if it's a too large organization, you can identify what are the critical services or critical product for which we need to do the DDR and we can't live without it. What are the particular services or kind of partners and vendors which I need to do a due diligence every 3 years or 5 years to make sure that we are still working with the right financial viable partner and has the right set of people, and there's nothing has changed. I have seen a lot of time that you from fraud perspective, a partner is brought into the ecosystem, and you do a particular due diligence, but then the entire ecosystem of that partner changes, the directorship changes, the partnership changes, and few of your own employees through their wives or family members become the partners and director of that firm, and you start giving the work. If you don't do the periodic review 2 years, 3 years to check whether the partners are still independent or not, you will not able to identify it. So this due diligence is very important at the time of onboarding, and as well as regular doing it on ongoing basis, 2 years, 3 years, depending on risk appetite for the company. So important tool from the prevention perspective for the organization. Another piece is on the policies for anti-bribery and anti-corruption. So we talked about fraud risk policy, we talk about code of conduct. I think this policies also should be stand out and should come very clearly in terms of what is the organization stand in terms of the corruption, in terms of giving the bribery to anyone, and what is the policy and how organization behave on. This gives very clear and conscious policy decision, and there is also a reporting mechanism which can be established in terms of behaviors on bribery and corruption. And my belief is that it should be reviewed on a very periodic basis. These policies which are there on anti-bribery and code of conduct are also required to be trained to the employees on regular basis. A declaration on annual basis is a very good mechanism to make sure that people are aware of this policy and they are declaring on annual basis that nothing has gone wrong in terms of code of conduct or anti-bribery, and any declaration from their side is required can be given. Another thing which is on the data leakage, which can be established. There are a lot of tools and technologies today which are available in the organization which can be implemented. Now, from fraud perspective, you see why data leakage is important. Today, if you take the example of a banking channel, where you have customer specific information like their PAN card, their Aadhaar cards, and their passwords and all that. If something is leaking from the channel through clicking the pictures of that Aadhaar card and PAN card and other privacy information and sending that to WhatsApp outside the organization, it can be a huge reputational and fraud risk for the banking sector. Let's take another example that you have a huge confidential database in terms of any innovation which is happening. Let's take an example of simply an automobile company who is designing a car or designing certain things which they will be launching soon. If some data goes out of the company without knowing it, it can be huge reputational as well as financial loss to the organization. So from fraud perspective, a right set of data leakage tools should be established, and a policy should be there in terms of which data can be shared with whom and how data would be floated within the organization and outside the organization. I've seen in most of the companies, you put a tool on your email system, whatever email systems you have, with a typical words like putting anti-bribery or a customer database as a word. So that email, if it goes out, it will give a trigger that this email has gone out. You can also very well put a control saying if there is a data for the customer, that email will not go out of the system, then email will be blocked by the system itself. And the trigger will happen to the manager that somebody is attempting. Companies like bank or automobile restrict the carrying of the smartphones in the workshop, or smartphones in the room where they are dealing, or in their laptops. You will find as a preventive control that you don't have a cameras in the laptops for the people who are working in the call center in the banking. They are not allowed to carry their smartphones in the rooms, and they only have a older phone, which is not a smartphone, where you can only do the SMS, to make sure that people are not able to click pictures, people are not able to send any data, and so on and so forth. So depending on the type of industry, I think this is very, very important from the prevention perspective, to have a right framework on how the data leakage can be preventive and controlled. SOD, segregation of duty, I think this is bread and butter for most of the organization, right? Set of controls, maker checker controls. Person should not be controlling the entire activity, like somebody is bringing the partner on board, should not have right to issue the PO. Somebody who is issuing the PO should not have right to approve that invoice. Somebody who is accepting the goods should not be approving the invoice, and so on and so forth. So right set of SODs actually help in preventive the controls. Very simple example, that the person who is making the entries in the banking or making the payments through bank or AP should not be doing the bank reconciliation. So that you detect anything, or you prevent anything going wrong. So these kind of SODs help organization in preventive anything going wrong in the organization. I think in most of the organization, you will feel that putting SODs in the entire organization is not feasible, because it requires a lot of manpower to do, and also at times it requires a lot of IT investment to be done. So for at least for the critical functions, critical business processes, with the sign off of the management, the SOD should be implemented. Wherever there are overlapping responsibilities or overlapping things where you cannot segregate the duty, a mechanism of doing the testing of those activities or creating certain kind of logs should be due. So very simple example, like in most of the companies in the IT field, you have a super user and who also have an admin right to it. And you cannot segregate that duty, because it's a limited manpower you have. So over there, the logs are getting created to make sure that if something is going wrong, that logs will tell you that that this conflict has happened. Yeah. I think last and very, very important is training and awareness. And whatever I've spoken about in the prevention, starting from your code or fraud risk or due diligence or anti-bribery policy. I think regular training, which means making them aware at the time of bringing on board regularly every year, and awareness, periodic awareness, quarterly, annually. It is very, very important, so that people are aware that it is top priority for the management and the entity. And in case something goes wrong, it will not be accepted by the organization. I think this is on the prevention side of the risk framework or the fraud risk framework which we established. Now on the detection side, I spoke about the fraud prevention unit. So you have this ombudsman and whistleblower investigation piece. Just give me a second. This is also very, very important process and very, very critical component of any fraud governance framework in the company. And I spoke about that it should be independent of the management. It should be a person who can do investigations without having any independent issues. I think this function, what they do is once the complaint is being received, and depending on the size of the company, there can be different mechanism of putting that complaints, letters, hot calls, emails, and so on and so forth. So this team does the assessment of the fraud which has happened. They also preserve the evidences which might have been given by the complainant or during the investigation might have seen. They go and conduct the interviews of the people against whom the complaints were there, analyze the evidence, identify the problem, identify the potential fraud which may have happened, and then they are also responsible for giving their report back to the management in terms of what action needs to be taken. If it is the fraud which has happened and has been proved, then whether the employee needs to be removed, whether the partner needs to be blacklisted, and what actions needs to be done is generally taken care by this team. The second very important piece is the control testing, and I touched upon it during the prevention section when I was talking about the fraud risk assessment, which was a design phase. I think the regular testing of this fraud is very, very important. And we spoke about that prioritization of controls can be done. It can be split into high, medium, and low, and then focus can be done by the management for doing the control testing at least on high quarterly basis, medium on 6 monthly basis, and low at least touched on once every year. Documentation of this FRA control testing is also very, very important. Considering if you are part of audit or if you are part of management, at least showcasing to the board and audit committee that we had a right set of controls. We were testing this also on regular basis, but still because of nature of business, something remain undetected and some fraud has happened. This also gave confidence to the board that we have right set of controls which have been tested regularly, and in case something goes wrong, it will be detected on timely basis rather than a surprise at the end. There are advanced data analyticals which can be put into the system, and in today's world, if you see, considering the AI is available, considering the IT infrastructure available, the kind of applications available, a very, very robust data analyticals can be inputted, and which gives snapshot to the management in case something is going on. Very, very simple examples, like you have a case, or you can have a case where you say that there is a purchase order which can be approved by X authorities, and it should go to Y authority if it is above certain threshold limit. Very simple example, like a purchase order up to 1 million can be approved by the head of the department. Anything goes beyond 1 million should go to the head of the function or head of the finance controller. Now, if you put this data analytics tool, you can see whether the persons are splitting the PO into pieces to circumvent the control of this approvals going to the other person. Instead of having a single PO of 2 million, which should have gone to CFO, splitting the 2 million PO into 3, which is 8 lakh, 8 lakh, and 4 lakh, and approving it themselves, and it does not go off. So those kind of smart data analytics tools can be implemented, which gives on monthly basis a snapshot to the management that whether things are going in right direction or not. These can also be used to monitor and track the trends, patterns in the data to identify in case anything is going wrong. You might have a partner who generally does 5 lakh business or a 10 lakh rupees business on a monthly basis. All of a sudden in a month, you find that that partner is doing 2 CR business or 5 CR business. So that kind of things can be picked up and see why it has happened. Generally, if people are doing the travel through airlines, so your monthly expenditure, you know what is the trend of that monthly expenditure of your travel. All of a sudden in the month, you find that it has gone up by 20% or 30%. It means something has gone wrong in that field. So those pick and test things can be done through this advanced data analytics tool. I think this is also required to be continuously refined and improvised depending on what kind of emerging fraud risk scenario which will be there in the organization and things which can go wrong. I have seen in my experience that it is very, very helpful to identify the trends, to identify the things which might go and remain undetected through regular second line of defense by finance or controllership thing, or third line of defense by internal auditors. Fourth and important is the transaction monitoring. I think this is the thing which is very, very important, where you can set up certain examples or certain controls in the system where any unusual transactions are red flag, which might be an unusual activity which might not happen. Let's take an example that in an organization where you have holidays on Saturdays and Sundays, and there's nobody who comes to the office, but you find that during the month ends or quarter end, on Sundays, there are certain entries which are being passed in the books. So those kind of trigger can come out, that who is doing these entries and why these entries are happening. These can very well be configured in the underlying ERP systems, where these triggers can be given out for any reviews. So this also gives very, very good red flags which can be taken care in the data analytics. And in case anything comes out, this can be again added up in the FRA control testing. Now the third piece is in the response side, which is also very, very important in terms of in case something has gone wrong, how the response will happen to the whistleblower or to the audit committee or to the regulator. Because in case of India, particularly for listed companies, there are certain requirements from company law perspective in case of any investigation, which is in the nature of financial irregularity, needs to be reported to the SEBI and the company law as well. So that requirements are there. So this committee is actually deciding factor that what needs to be done. This committee should be directly reporting to the audit committee and should have maybe a dotted line within the function, but should be independent of the things. This setups a very, very clear scope and responsibilities. What is done. These guys also recommend in terms of for the investigation, the outcome of it. The person needs to be removed, the person needs to be blacklisted, the vendor needs to be removed, and so on and so forth. I think action is very, very important from the response perspective. The action does not only mean the outcome of the investigation or closing of the investigation, but the action is also means that you go back and respond back to the whistleblower, telling him that this is your complaint, this was the action which has been taken, and we have closed loop it. Whether you are able to prove it or does not prove it, but at least giving it back to the whistleblower, give the confidence within the entire ecosystem of the organization that whatever is getting reported is actioned upon. And believe you me, people down the line or in the ecosystem talk to each other, and they are aware that how robust this function is and how critical they take any report or any whistleblower which might happen. This action also means that in case anything has gone wrong, after the investigation it was proved, it has to go back either to the fraud risk assessment framework, add up in that, or go back to the function and get the process changed. That this was a lacuna in your current process, which has resulted in this kind of fraud which has happened. Please go back and change your process and make sure that this don't get repeated. This also means that updation of policies, procedure, guidelines, and so on and so forth within the organization. So very, very important piece from the governance perspective to make sure that you act and close loop any whistleblower complaint or anything which comes through your prevention model or detection model and close it out. Remediation I've already touched upon in the action piece. Last piece again is the regulatory response which comes through. Again, this is the binding law in case something needs to be reported. Stock exchange, board, audit committee, again, this needs to be closed. I think this oversight, which is there, which is tone of the top, and when you have this kind of complete framework in the organization, I believe that the results are good. It gives the confidence to the management. It gives confidence to the stakeholders. It gives confidence to the shareholders as well, that this company has a right corporate governance mechanism. The company has a right set of people who understand what fraud means and who understand and take appropriate and timely action in case any fraud has happened or any integrity related things are there. This kind of behavior also emphasizes the importance of ethical behavior in the organization. Also puts a lot of accountability within the functions, within the processes, within the management as well to take the right actions. I think to sum it up, you might not able to do everything and first go, but at least start the journey of putting this right fraud governance framework within your own organization. It's a long journey. It might take some longer time, like having some policies and creating the code of conduct, building the right set of training modules, bringing the right set of people doing the DDR, and then and doing it on regular basis. But always there's a good time to start on this. So I think that's it from my side. Any questions right now you have, I can answer. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Ranjit to take over the second session.
Thank you so much, sir. It was a wonderful presentation, very knowledgeable, and we really appreciate that you've shared a lot of knowledge among us. As of now, there are no questions in the chat box. So if it comes later, I'll ask you. But as of now, there are no questions. I think you've made everything so transparent, so crystal clear that no further question anyone needs to ask, because you've made it very understandable. So thank you. I really propose a vote of thanks to you, and thank you so much for giving such a wonderful.
Thanks. I'm here till the end of the session, so happy to answer that as well. Over to you.
Right. And yes, of course, after Sarabjit sir, now we have another eminent and revered speaker, that is CA Ranjit Singh. Sir, very good evening to you, and I welcome you to this session. And before you go, let me just say 2-3 few lines to introduce you. CA Ranjit Singh is a seasoned fraud risk management professional with over 20 years of experience in ethics, compliance, investigation, anti-bribery, anti-corruption policies, forensic, data leakage, monitoring, litigation, legal, and company secretarial affairs. He is a certified fraud examiner, member of the Institute of Company Secretaries. He's LLB, MBA, MCOM, and Commerce graduate. Currently, he is working as a general manager at Indus Towers Limited. With a deep understanding of field investigation, interviewing, collecting evidences, and conducting cases, he has demonstrated success in leading organizations to create ethical and compliant cultures while effectively mitigating fraud risk. So, sir, I think like you have all the degrees, and it is endless if I keep on and on and on. And I think participants will get the knowledge when you speak. So I'll not stand much between you and the listeners. So please, sir, I invite you to start your deliberation, and we would really welcome you, and we are eager to hear you. So over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Triveni, for the nice introduction. And I also would like to thank all the members of Institute of Chartered Accountants who have joined this session, and in fact, who are looking forward to listen to me in terms of what forensic investigation is all about. So before, in terms of what is forensic investigation, I think first thing which is important to know is what is the word forensic itself. If I would put it in terms of from where the origin of this word has come, is it is forensic is a Latin word, forensis, and this means place pertaining to a forum. So in Rome, around 1700 century, when legal proceeding used to take place, these proceedings used to take place in public square or a marketplace, and that place is called forensis. And from there, this word has been taken up, and now it is being widely used as forensic investigations. And when we say forensic investigation, what exactly it means, though the word look fancy, but primarily it talks about methods and techniques which an investigator uses to gather and analyze evidence in the context of a legal or a criminal investigation. Since we all are from corporate world, for us, primarily this is related to corporate investigations, which we conduct as part of our corporate setup or for our clients as well. So before, in terms of getting to know in terms of what exactly is there in forensic investigation and how we conduct ourselves, how we can conduct forensic investigations, let us understand from an accountant or chartered accountant perspective in terms of where we would be using, we can use these skills. And so typically we need to understand in terms of what can be fraud scenarios for wherein we may apply these forensic investigations. So as was mentioned earlier, audit is one part, but forensic is also an area wherein we can have lot of we are expected to have a lot of knowledge in terms of dealing those cases for our clients and for our organizations. So typically we can apply fraud investigation techniques when we are looking into a case which is related to expense reimbursement fraud, or it is a theft of cash or inventory for an organization. We can use and apply this for financial statement fraud wherein or a misappropriation of funds or cases related to false invoices. Similarly, while working for an organization or a corporate setup, we may come across cases wherein our employees are involved in bribery and corruption, or they are having conflict of interest wherein they are keeping their interest at forefront versus interest of a corporate setup. We can also apply these forensic investigation techniques while investigating into cases related to hacking, phishing, malware, ransomware, identity theft. There can also be a scenario wherein we are provided with an opportunity to deal with an insider trading issue wherein somebody has illegally made money out of price sensitive information. Similarly, we can apply these techniques to cases of embezzlement, and also tax frauds is also an area wherein we can apply these. So these examples are an illustrative list. It is not an exhaustive list. So I've just tried to cover in terms of what are the areas wherein we primarily in corporate setup, we get cases of investigations. Now, once we have understood in terms of what is forensic investigation or an investigation, we need to understand in terms of what are the steps. So since we as an accountant and we are aware of statutory auditors, audits and corporate or internal audits, we know that for any audit to start, there has to be a proper planning. So similar to that in forensic investigation, first we need to establish in terms of what is our plan and what we want to achieve as our goal so that our objectives are clearly defined. So once that is defined, then the next step comes is gathering information in terms of what is the information which is required to achieve my goals, wherein which this step includes collecting and reviewing documents, data, and other evidence relevant to the investigation. Then once we gather information, the next step which comes is interviewing witnesses. So primarily in this stage, we try and identify in terms of who are the persons from whom we can seek information which can support us in establishing our goals or in conclusion of an investigation that has been entrusted to us. Then once we have received all the information, we have conducted information, then the next step comes is analysis of the data, that is all the information or data that we have received. We analyze to find out or identify patterns, anomalies, or any possible fraud indicators. Once we have done all the 4 steps, then the next comes is reporting our findings, because the whole objective of any forensic investigation is to come to a conclusion and to present a report. So reporting and establishing a formal detailed report of covering all investigation steps and presenting it to stakeholders, it is most important step, because this how we conduct ourselves while presenting the report, it is that step which determines the outcome. If we are not sure about something which we are presenting, probably management will not take us seriously, and appropriate action which we want on our report or recommendation which we want from management to get implemented, we will not be able to get those implemented. And the last step for any forensic investigation is to ensure that appropriate action, which may or may not include legal action, and at some places it may include implementing additional internal controls to prevent future frauds based on our investigation findings. So these sort of recommendations are can be implemented as part of a future prevention of forensic investigation steps. So going ahead, I'll be sharing in terms of what exactly we need to do for as far as one individual step goes. So as I mentioned, that investigation planning is the first step of any forensic investigation. So in this, there are few aspects which we need to keep in mind. One is we need to define our scope and objectives of an investigation. And another important information, important thing which we need to keep in mind is that we need to identify the necessary resources. And as you know that for every audit or for every activity, we need to conduct that activity in a time frame manner. So we need to establish in terms of what are our timelines and what are the milestones. And lastly, we need to also establish communication protocols in terms of how we would be communicating with various stakeholders from which we would be seeking an details. So I'll take an example here to elaborate more. Let's say we have received a complaint that one of our employee is giving favors to one of the suppliers. Now, and it is being told to us that he has made huge money and he is favoring him in allocation of work. So if we have received this kind of a complaint, or we are investigating this kind of a complaint, then the first is to define a scope and objective. So now the objective of this is we need to establish two things. One is whether actually there is a favor which has been made to a particular vendor, and whether this favor is being made to a partner in lieu of some kickbacks or some other benefits by our employee. Having said that, if this is the case, then our scope should be limited to that particular area for which that business partner belongs to. It may happen that this business partner works only in one location. Then we should be restricting our investigation to that particular location or that particular function. And if let's say that investigation is wherein while conducting an investigation, we got to know that the complaint is made against a person who is based at a particular location, then just after receiving that complaint, it does not mean that we should start investigating or seeking data of all the locations, all the employees, but rather we should be restricting our investigation to only the area or the employee against which we have received this complaint. So this is another first step of any investigation, which is planning. Another is gathering information. So once we have identified our scope, that these are the employees or this is the business partner against whom we need to be causing an inquiry, then at this stage, what we do is we try to reach out to different stakeholders and we gather information. Now, what can be an information which can be gathered is, let's say, coming back to the same example. In this example, if we need to seek whether a particular business partner is getting favored or not, we need to first of all seek the information in terms of what is the volume of business which he has done, and if whether he is performing one particular activity or he is performing number of activities. If let's say that supplier is that business partner has supplied chairs to us, then we will be identified in terms of how many business partners are there who have provided chairs to the company, whether there is an RFP process which has been followed for selection of this partner or not, what was the initial price quote that has come. So that sort of information is fetched, and then we can in fact we can seek in terms of who introduced that business partner, what are the documents which he has submitted. And in this stage, if he is suspected to be close to a particular employee, we can get the data in terms of what is the background of that particular employee, whether they worked in any previous organization together, are they associated, are they related to each other. So these sort of information is then gathered for conducting our investigation. And once we have received an information as an investigator, it is important to know and to check whether the information that is provided to us is accurate or not. There have been, given my experience, there have been cases wherein people have submitted falsified information to us as part of our inquiry. And there have been instances wherein people try to cut corners to provide information because they know that if they provide right information, probably the allegations against them can get substantiated. Another important thing is source of information. So we need to maintain a complete chain of custody in terms of from where we have received this information, because that establishes in terms of what is the credibility of our information. So let's say if we have not stored information, the source of information, then probably somebody may challenge that this information is not right or has not been taken inappropriately, which in a way weakens our evidence. Similarly, while we have gathered all the information, since we are working in an age of data, and lot of data is getting generated on hourly basis, it is very difficult for us to do investigation manually, or because now we have moved ahead from using papers and all of our data is now getting stored digitally. So there are tools and there are technologies which are available which help us crunch those data faster, and it in a way shortens the cycle of an investigation. So once investigation planning is done, we have gathered the information. Another important step is conducting interviews. Now, interviews can be of different category, and these interviews can be information seeking, wherein you have received a complaint and you are just calling up, or you have asked someone to be present to you, and you are called him to get the information which is related to which is more of a seeking details. Wherein, let's say if in the scenario which I was discussing, so if I have to check whether this partner who has introduced this partner, I may be calling up a supply chain or a procurement guy, and I can interview him in terms of whether proper due diligence was conducted while inducting this business partner, or he felt that somebody tried to push through the induction of this business partner. So this is kind of an interview wherein we seek information. Another area or another type of interview which is cognitive interviews. Cognitive interviews is done to validate the information that we have gathered. Let's say somebody has told us that there is only one business partner who can supply us a particular chairs. Then we can conduct interviews within the organization and outside the organization, and to find out whether there is genuine, whether this is a genuine information, or somebody is just trying to hide the true information from us. Another type of interview which are relevant while conducting an investigation is behavioral interview, wherein you try to judge, or you try to assess the credibility of the interview by analyzing their behavior and body language. So let's say if as part of your investigation, you have called someone for a meeting, and you have sent him a mail, you have dropped him a message, or you have tried to reach him out on WhatsApp or MS Teams, but he is not responding to your mails or to your messages, then probably this gives an indication probably he has something to hide, and that is why he is not coming up front. So so if on behavioral interview there are different kinds of hooks which help us understand various behaviors of employee, and what is the importance of a person, and what are the importance of body language. So that is also important aspect of conducting an interview. Another is admission seeking interview. So this generally is being done wherein you have established your case and you are you're calling someone to confess or admit his guilt. This is done at probably when you conclude your investigation, but since I was covering various types of interview, I felt that it is important to cover all type of interviews at this stage, hence this is covered. Another is narrative interviews, wherein generally narrative interview is generally wherein you call someone and you tell him कि अच्छा बताओ क्या हुआ. So it is basically a thing wherein you are asking person to tell their side of story in their own words. And generally, if you have seen mostly in police investigations, what they do is they call all the accused and they interview them one by one in different places to seek information from their side, and then they try to in fact see what are the disconnects in the stories given by the various persons whom they have called. And this is an older way of investigation wherein digital evidences were not available. And though police generally in police stations and all, if you come across cases, police do use this tactics to identify the various accuracy of the events and whether the persons who are giving a story is talking truth or not. Another thing is important is once we have received all the data, we are sure that the data that we have received is correct and there is merit in the complaint. Then the thing which comes important is analysis of the data. So we need to identify what is the relevant data and what is the data which is not required, which includes cleansing and transforming the data. And then we need to apply appropriate analytic techniques. Now, for applying analytic techniques, Excel is one of the easier analytics tool. But for large data set, there are other tools which I would be covering in my following slides. So those tools can be used to interpret the data and to come to the right conclusion. So once we have conducted our inquiries and we have covered all the 4 steps, then it is very important from an investigator's point of view to have a summary of the findings and to come to the right conclusion. It is important that while making a report, we should not be giving much importance to hearsay information, because our report has to be based on the fact and the evidences that we have gathered while conducting our data analytics, while interviewing employees, etc. But we should refrain our information which is based on hearsay, because it is not based by the it cannot be substantiated by the facts. And tomorrow, if you have to go legal or you have to file a complaint against a particular individual, or whether it is in court or court of law or before police, those hearsay evidences will fall and you will not get merit on those hearsay evidences. So first thing which is important is you need to organize the report structure. It should be clear and concise. We should not be using large jargons. We should be making our report in a simple language which is understandable by anyone and everyone. And we should also annex all the supporting evidences along with our report. And we should always adhere to ethical and legal standards. We should not use information which is obtained. First of all, we should not involve ourselves in gathering information which is gathered through illegal sources. So whatever we gather information, it has to be gathered ethically and legally. And our report should be covering only those aspects which are legal and valid and relevant to the report. So typically, if you ask me what is the flow of a report writing, so one is it should clearly mark that most of our inquiries that we conduct are confidential. So on top of the report, it should clearly highlight that it is a confidential report. It should give date on which this report is being prepared. It should have background in terms of what are the allegations that are being raised in the complaint. Then it should have sequence of events, and then it should have your detailed findings. And once you have submitted your detailed findings, it should also have in the last para what is the conclusion of your investigation. And last but not the least is your recommendation. Now your recommendations can be divided into 2 parts. One is disciplinary action. If you feel that this is what needs to be taken as part of our inquiry, and other is lessons learned, wherein these lessons learned will help the organization in terms of preventing recurrence of such instances. So if you prepare your report in this manner, management will be very happy, because you are not only detecting the frauds, but you are also helping management know that these are the steps if they take, they will never have to come across such situation. So once you have submitted your report and you have got a go-ahead from the management that probably that your allegations get substantiated, then last step which is important is taking action on the findings, or getting those recommendations implemented. Now if this recommendation is that a person needs to be separated, then as a fraud investigator you need to consult or interact with relevant function in HR in most cases, wherein you tell them that probably that this is the recommendation which has come from a committee, and they seek HR help to get that implemented and ensure that individual is moved out of the organization. And if it is related to, let's say, a business partner or a supplier needs to be separated, then that recommendation should be reached out to supply chain or procurement function to get that information the recommendation implemented. Another thing which is important is in terms of if company wants to take a legal action, then probably as a fraud investigator we may need to interact with company in-house legal team, or if it is not there, then probably the outside legal counsels to get those actions done against the persons who has committed unethical activity with the organization. And once we have taken disciplinary action, then another thing which I covered as part of my report is that lessons learned. We need to tell in terms of what are the lessons that we have learned and what are the steps which are required to ensure that there is no such repetition of the issue or the incident that has happened and which has led to this forensic investigation. So with this, I've tried and covered in terms of concise what are the steps of forensic investigations. Now, if we talk about 2023, now digital forensics or fraud in any forensic investigations requires digital forensics, because we are living in a world which is wherein data is the king, and everything, whether it is in our personal life or it is in our corporate life, data in lot of information is getting generated digitally. So if you talk about any forensic investigation, 60-70% of investigations, if I put it even a larger percentage, that 70-80% of investigations are being concluded basis digital forensics. So it is important that we understand what is digital forensics and how we can use digital forensic tools and techniques to detect and prevent fraud for our organizations and our personal setups. I'll give you an example. If you follow any investigation series, whether it is Crime Patrol and all, you would see that most of these investigations wherein police are able to catch hold of criminals, they rely a lot on their mobile phones. So through mobile phones, they are able to tag their locations, they are able to track their data which is there on WhatsApp. They can use photographs to identify who are the persons with whom he is roaming around. Then they can access social media accounts like Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. So these sort of, so even a lot of digital forensics helps in investigations. Similarly, in corporate setup, we generally provide laptops to our employees, basically, and we also, in some organizations, even mobiles are also provided to the employees by the organizations. And these company provided mobile phones and these company provided laptops do generally help organizations while carrying out any fraud investigations. So digital forensics is very important. So if you ask me in terms of what is digital forensics, so digital forensic is a branch of forensic science that deals with recovery and analysis of digital evidences from electronic devices. It is an essential tool in the investigation of digital crimes, and it is used to gather evidences in case ranging from cyber attacks to intellectual property theft. So there are various purposes for which digital forensics is used. And as I mentioned, that gathering information and collecting evidence is one important step of any investigation. So digital investigation is gaining lot of traction, and this is an area which, if you are good in digital forensics, you will eventually become good in your investigations also. So primarily, if you ask me what are the steps of digital forensics, so digital forensics involve use of specialized software and techniques to cover and analyze electronic data. Let's say in the same scenario, if I go back to same scenario wherein we received a complaint against a person that he is being favoring a particular business partner, and company has provided him a laptop, then company can seek custody of that laptop. And in that laptop, you can find lot of user files which he has created while working for the organization, and you also got access to emails, company emails which he has used. So if we apply digital forensics in that case, we will be using separate tools to analysis in terms of first recovering the electronic data from his laptop and then analyzing that to find out whether there is merit in the investigation or not. Now, as I mentioned, it is also used by law enforcement agencies and corporate organizations and legal professionals to investigate digital crimes and intellectual property theft. In the earlier presentation, Saurabh mentioned that if you are in an automobile sector and your company design gets stolen, or somebody leaks that information, then that is a major breach which can have a reputational or a financial loss to the organization. So if you as a fraud investigator, if you've been entrusted with that investigation, then you have to use digital forensics. Then only you will be able to find out in terms of how that data has been leaked. Similarly, digital forensics can help to identify the source of cyber attack and prevent future attacks. So, lot of time in if you follow newspapers in Delhi, one of the biggest hospitals, their systems were attacked by some fraudsters, and that hospital was not able to access information related to their employees, etc. So it is through digital forensics that we can check and we can investigate those cyber attacks, and we can find out in terms of how this breach has taken place and what are the steps which we need to take to ensure that such frauds do not take place or hit the organization. Similarly, if you last year there were a couple of instances wherein Google went down or Facebook went down. So these were basically the cyber attacks which happened on those organizations, and these organizations were not able to prevent those frauds or those cyber attacks. And later on, they must have done some digital forensics to identify the source of those cyber attacks, and they would have prevented and they have taken steps to prevent such future attacks. Typically, the process of digital forensic, it involves, as in the forensic investigation, in digital forensics also, first of all, you need to acquire the information. Then you need to analyze the information. And once you have analyzed the information, then you need to report data which you have extracted from electronic devices. So as we are growing, digital forensics is evolving. On daily basis, we ourselves receive messages wherein someone will say that your electricity bill is overpaid, and if you do not click on this link and make payment, you will be your connection will be disconnected. We also receive phishing mails wherein they will say that you are going to inherit so many lakhs of worth of property, and if you are not paying, if you are not if you accept on that mail, they will send you a link to transfer money to those accounts. All those kind of frauds are take using digital space, and digital forensics is the way through which we can investigate and crack those cases. While working for one of those banks, we got I've investigated a case wherein one of the cyber groups, he used to clone credit cards of the customers who were coming to the restaurant in which he was working as a waiter, and he later used those cards to procure air tickets for third parties. And while we investigated that case, we found that he bought some skimmer from one of the neighboring countries, and he used that skimmer to cull out that data from the cards which he has stolen by way of from his data from those customers. So there are different types of frauds which are happening. If you have seen Jamtara web series, or last week there was a news that in one of the neighboring areas in Haryana, there were some 130 odd persons have been arrested by 5,000 police personnel, and these individuals were involved in cyber criminal activities, and they were sending various phishing mails to seek information from various innocent people, and they were trying to defraud them. So now coming to in terms of why we need data forensics. So one is investigation is one area wherein digital forensics is required. So another is that if, let's say, I am using a mobile phone and I'm not able to access my mobile phone, or my laptop has crashed, then digital forensics also help in recovery of lost or deleted data. It not only supports in corporate investigations, wherein even if somebody has deleted an information from his or her laptop, we are able to recover that information using data forensic techniques. But in normal case, let's say if I have lost that data, I can easily get that data recovered using digital forensics. Another thing which is important is that digital forensics also helps in investigation of criminal activities. Police also uses this, and if you would be knowing that now there is a mandate for that there has to be a cyber cell in every district of the country, and combined police is establishing those cyber cells, because day by day digital forensic importance is being increased, and lot of digital crimes or cyber crimes are taking place. So digital forensics also helps in preventing future digital crimes by analyzing digital evidences and identifying what are the areas wherein there is scope of improvement. There are like there were mails circulating, or there was news that one of the largest company which provides emails like Yahoo and all, their data was leaked, customer data was leaked. So if a company would have carried out that investigation, they would have clearly identified in terms of what are the gaps through which this data has been leaked, and they would have plugged those gaps. So these are the areas wherein data forensic helps identifying what are the gaps or what are the evidences which help fraud investigator in coming to the right conclusions. Now, as I mentioned, that we can use digital forensics on our computers. So there are different types of digital forensics. One is computer forensics. In this computer forensics, we conduct investigation and analysis of digital evidence related to computer and other devices. So primarily, if let's say, as part of my investigation, I get custody of laptop of an employee, and I try to fetch in terms of what is the evidence in support of the allegation, then computer forensic is required, and this technique is called This technique helps in detecting the fraud or unethical activity which is reported. Similarly, if there is a ransomware attack wherein somebody has taken control of our network traffic and somebody has breached our network. So then network forensics helps. The examination of network traffic and data to identify security incident and investigate potential attack. This is called your network forensic. Another is similar to mobile. The process of extracting and analysis digital evidence from mobile devices is called mobile device forensics. Then there is forensic data analysis. So forensic data analysis is basically the examination and interpretation of data to identify any patterns, anomalies, and potential evidences. Next is memory analysis. This analysis determines in terms of what is the volatility of computers, and it helps in the investigation of potential security breaches and attacks. So this is types of digital forensic. Though when we as a person is being told what is digital forensic, generally what comes to our mind is it is that we are talking only about computer forensic, but it covers other areas also, and there is a specialized skill which is required to carry out network forensics or memory forensics. Moving ahead, I also want to cover in terms of what are the laws around digital forensics. If you as a fraud investigator has been entrusted a task to carry out an investigation and you choose to use digital forensics to unearth the truth, then you should be knowing that there are laws which you need to follow to get the evidence collected by you acceptable by court of law. So first, as Nanda sir has covered, is the Evidence Act 1872. This is one of the oldest act which was created prior to Indian independence, and this is most important act because it governs what admissibility of electronic evidences in Indian courts. So it basically talks about what precautions are required before submitting any evidence to the Indian courts. If we do not comply by the requirements of Indian Evidence Act 1872, then how good, even if we have done a good investigation, our evidence will not become acceptable in Indian court of law. So this act, there is one special provision which has been created in this act, which is under section 65B of the act, which deals with admissibility of electronic records as evidence and lays down the condition that must be met for electronic evidence to be admissible in the court. So while doing a digital forensics, we should be knowing what the requirements of section 65B to ensure that the evidence that we have collected becomes admissible in the court. So in this, we need to clearly identify basically what is the source from which we have acquired this information, and we need to give an undertaking that the information that we have acquired is not obtained through unethical means. There is an undertaking or an affidavit which needs to be submitted to the court along with the evidence which you want to be submitting to the court. This is one act which is important. Another is the Information Technology Act 2000. This act deals with various cyber crimes and provides for penalties and punishment for offense such as hacking, phishing, cyber stalking, and cyber terrorism. So if an organization is attacked by, let's say, cyber stalking, cyber terrorism, or somebody has hacked into the network of an organization, that organization can initiate action against those crooks or fraudsters under the Information Technology Act 2000. Another important act here is the Indian Penal Code 1860. This act contains various provisions dealing with cyber crimes, and section 66 deals with what are the computer related offenses. Section 66 provides for penalty for sending offensive messages through communication services. Section 66B provides for dishonestly receiving stolen computer information, resources or communication devices, and Section 67 deals with publishing and transmitting obscene material in electronic form. So it is there are different acts which already exist in the country to ensure to take action against the cyber criminals, but as part of our investigation, we should also be knowing that these are the acts which wherein we can take action against the fraud crooks, but we also need to ensure that when we gather our evidences and we conduct our investigation, we comply with the requirement of these acts. In addition to this, the Code of Criminal Procedure 1973, which is an umbrella act, this also lays down procedure of investigation and prosecution of criminal offences in India. So if you are investigating a crime or a case which is criminal in nature, then you need to know in terms of what is the search and seizure procedure for electronic devices and the examination of electronic devices during investigation. So it laid down that there has to be chain of custody, there has to be proper documentation of how the seizure was conducted. Most of police while seizing someone, they do comply with the requirements of this act. Another important act which has come into existence in 2005, which is Right to Information Act. This law provides for disclosure of information held by public authorities and requires public authority to maintain records in electronic form. So prior to 2005, there was not a mandate from public authorities to maintain records in electronic form. But with this act coming into force, this requirement has been made. Another policy which is important is National Cyber Security Policy 2013. This policy provides for establishment of cyber forensic laboratory in each state to deal with cyber crimes and creation of a National Critical Information Protection Center to protect critical infrastructure from cyber threats. So in all this cyber forensic laboratory helps when you deal with police or local authorities, because a lot of time when you report them about a cyber attack being held on a company or an individual, they generally refer those cases to cyber forensic laboratory, and then they carry out detailed investigation of those cases. So these are the acts which I feel are relevant and you must keep in your mind. Having said that, now that we have established in terms of why digital forensic is important and what is the need of digital forensics, now it is important for us to understand what is the process of digital forensics. So in digital forensics, there are steps which includes collecting, analyzing, and preserving data to investigate and prevent digital crimes. So first and foremost important step of any digital forensic process is acquisition of data. So if, as I mentioned earlier, that if we want that because if we are conducting any investigation, at the start of the investigation, we are not sure whether in terms of how big is the crime or how big is the issue. So from very first step, we need to be sure that we should always keep in mind that whatever investigation we are making, tomorrow this may be presented or this may require to be presented before court of law. So with this objective, we need to be very cautious while acquiring the data, because if there is some issue or if we have not acquired the data in forensically sound manner, tomorrow it may happen that our investigation becomes futile, as the evidence collected by us becomes redundant and it becomes not acceptable to the court of law. So first is acquisition. Another important is analysis, which involves processing and examining the data for evidence. Another is reporting, which involves documenting the findings in clear and concise manner. And last step is presenting, which involves presentation of the findings to relevant parties so that appropriate recommendations and conclusions can be arrived at. So these are the 4 steps of digital forensics. Now, as I mentioned, that acquisition of data is the first step for a digital forensics. What we need to keep in mind is when collecting electronic data during digital forensics, we need to take precautions to preserve the data integrity and ensure that it is not altered in any way. So let's say I have been entrusted with an investigation of an employee who is working as a cashier in a bank, and I have been told that you need to go there and you need to take custody of his laptop. And when I went to his seat and when I found that he's working on a laptop which is on. So as a forensic investigator, when I am taking custody of this laptop, I need to ensure that I take the laptop as it is. And I should not be doing that. I am shutting down the laptop and then I am closing the windows, etc. And then I am taking the custody of the laptop. So we need to ensure data integrity and ensure that nothing has been altered. We need to be taking the data or acquisition of an electronic device as is basis. And here comes important step, which is chain of custody. One is when you're accepting that device, you need to prepare a document which clearly defines chain of custody of the device, which clearly tells in terms of from whom you have taken that device, what is the date on which that device was collected, what is the time on which that device was collected, and you need to take signature of the individual from whom you are taking that custody. And if you have evidences, please take signature of those individuals also in whose presence you have taken custody of the device. Because by doing that, tomorrow that individual will not come and say that the information which you are presenting does not belong to me, because you have taken the custody of the laptop and probably you may have put in those documents or those evidences which you are claiming now to be made or have been created by me. So that is the reason that chain of custody is very much important, and it is the first and very important step, because this has an influence on admissibility of the evidence. Now, once you have taken a custody, then there are specialized tools through which you can collect that data and to maintain the integrity. Another thing is important is when you have taken a custody of that laptop, never start investigation on your own and on that device on which you have taken. You need to first take out that data from that device to a separate device. And for doing this, there are dedicated tools which ensures that integrity of the data is maintained. There are trained professionals who have expertise in digital forensics. They'll help you collect that data in some other device so that this original electronic device which you have taken custody of remains sacrosanct. And once you have taken out that data, then you secure that original device in a secure location, and to ensure that it does not have an unauthorized access. And once, if you are analyzing the device, turn on that device and keep it connected to power source until you have taken proper custody and got the records done that this and have taken data from that device. So first step is acquisition of that data. Chain of custody is very important, and chain of custody, as I mentioned, is a very critical step. It includes chronological sequence of custody, as I have already covered. It also includes how control and transfer of analysis and disposition of electronic evidence has happened. Plus, it also, while capturing a chain of custody, we need to ensure that dates of every such transfer is captured. Another step which is important, once you have captured that data, then it is important that you analyze that data. Since I've been conducting inquiries from last 20 years, nowadays most of the laptops are 500 GB laptops. If you get custody of any laptop, generally it has data of 2 to 300 GB. Similarly, if you get hold of somebody's mobile, that mobile also are now having memory size. Normal standard mobile is having a normal memory size of 64 GB. Few years back, 80 GB used to be the size of the laptop, memory size of the laptop. Now with lot of data that is getting generated, these data sizes have increased. It is humanly impossible for us to look into each and every evidence or every information or every data in the device that we have taken custody of. So it is important that we use tools to analyze that data. So there are specialized programs to handle large data sets, and these tools perform automatically. So they do automated analysis for us, and they in a way shortens your investigation cycle. Some of the best tools that we have used as part of our inquiries includes NCASE, FTK, X-Ways Forensics. So these are some of the tools. I'm not recommending any tool, but these are the tools. There are other. Entella is another one such tool which helps in analyzing large data sets. And with AI coming into fore, we will very soon be having these tools which are using artificial intelligence to take to the logical and right conclusions at the earliest possible time. So once we have used these tools and then using these tools, we have identified this information. So this helps and shortens our time. And with the right tools and techniques, digital forensic, we can uncover evidence of illegal activity, and which will help that we meet our goal, which is to take every investigation to a logical conclusion. Now, one thing which I've covered is in terms of first as a first step of any forensic investigation is acquisition of the data. And at that time, we have studied that there is chain of custody, which is very important. Another step which I've covered is use of tool to identify in terms of or to make that data ready for analysis. And so, but while you may have data availability at your hand, you may have used right tools, but if you do not use keywords, right keywords, chances of you reaching to a right conclusion is less. So there is lot of importance of keywords, and let me tell you, these keywords are very subjective in nature, and it is important for any forensic investigator to ensure that he uses right keywords, because these keywords, if we use right keyword, this can help narrow down a search and focus only on the most relevant data. I take an example. So let's say if coming back to the case which I was discussing, I have received a case wherein I've been told that one particular employee is favoring a particular business partner, and if that business partner, if I have to look for, and I've got an access to the laptop of that employee, and I'm looking of the data, emails and user files of that data, then that the employee, then first and foremost keyword which becomes important is email ID or mobile number of the business partner with whom he is suspected to be close. Any one-on-one email which he has sent to that business partner or has received from that business partner, that also becomes important, and it helps me check what is the direct when no one is watching, what is the direct tone of their communication. Are they mentioning anything on their emails or on their user files? Similarly, while conducting an investigation, if we use overly broad or generic terms, let's say if you use fraud as a keyword while carrying out investigation, it will throw a lot of false positives. So let's say if that individual has received some link to a seminar which is wherein fraud word is mentioned, or he's having copies of code of conduct wherein fraud has been explained. So you will get lot of false positive, and this will waste lot of your time. Considering that, we should not be using generic terms. Similarly, there are expressions which we can use wherein through which we can narrow down our searches. So keywords should be there. There are two sets of keywords. One is which is specific to the case which is under investigation, and other keywords are which are relevant for all the cases. For example, I'll give you some examples of the keywords. So let's say if in a similar case, if what can be an example of a specific keyword? So specific keywords, as I mentioned, email ID of that business partner, mobile number of that business partner, addresses of the supplier or business partner, their personal Aadhaar cards, their personal PAN cards. So that those becomes your specific. Similarly, if I try to find that our particular employee has got benefit, has received any benefit from that business partner, then even his personal details, his personal email ID, if I get access to which statements, whether it is his income tax returns which he has kept on his official provided laptop, or details of his family members or their copies of their bank accounts and all. So those becomes important. So these so these becomes your keywords which is specific to a case which has come. Then there could be generic keywords like somebody we can put in a word as commission or chalta hai. There can be a keyword wherein we can put in give me where is my share. My share can be a good keyword, generic keyword which can be applied anywhere and everywhere. Or kickbacks or my cut. These can be used as a generic keywords. Keywords, as I mentioned, that chain of custody is important for admissibility of any evidence. Similarly, keywords, having the right keyword is important to reach to the right conclusion. If you are not, so typically if you ask me, if you are not using a 300 GB data set, if you are and you are not applying your keywords, and if you want to try checking each and every information, probably you may take 2 to 3 weeks to complete one particular device. Having said that, if you use right keywords and apply data analytics, you may be able to conclude that investigation in matter of 3 to 4 or maybe 5 days, not beyond that. Because as an accountant and as a fraud investigators, we are not at the liberty of time. If some serious offense occurs in any organization, the moment management or somebody reports that instances, our time clock starts running, and we are expected to close that case at a real fast pace. We do not have a liberty of sitting on a case for, let's say, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. We are expected to close the case at the earliest. Now, what can be a digital evidence? So once you have got a custody of a document, a custody of a laptop, you have applied keywords, and you have reviewed a disk, what can be a digital evidence? So digital evidence refers to electronic information or data that can be used as evidence in legal proceedings. And as digital technology continues to advance, the importance of digital evidence is also growing. So what can be a digital evidence? So one is emails. If we get any information which is available on emails, then that becomes an evidence. Similarly, instant messages. Now we have WhatsApp, which people use for Insta messaging. There is an app called Telegram. In our office setups also we use MS Teams. There are organizations which use Zoom. There are organizations which use Yammer. So there are many applications, instant messaging, wherein we can get evidence. There can be computer files. These files can be Word documents. These files can be your Excel sheets. These files can be your Word documents. The case which I was discussing. So let's say if I while reviewing, there is likelihood that while reviewing computer files, I would be looking for, let's say a Word document or a PDF wherein I detect that this individual of ours is having a partnership deed signed with a business partner, or I may come across PAN card of that individual, that business partner or a supplier, and I found that father of that business partner mentioned in that PAN card is similar to father name is similar to the father name of wife of our employee. So those sort of evidences helps in establishing relationships and becomes part of digital evidences. Similarly, social media posts and interactions. If in a similar case, while reviewing Facebook, let's say if I come across that business partner is attending birthday parties of the employee concerned, or they have traveled together to a country visit or outside country with their families. So these sort of interactions do become evidences to show that probably there is much more than a normal relationship. Similarly, GPS data and location information also helps in establishing crime scenes. So while in most of the cases, generally, if when police carries out investigation, they generally rely a lot on the information which is provided by mobile of the accused, and typically to identify whether presence of a particular individual on a particular location. Generally, police relies on what is the location of the mobile during that particular moment on which that incident has happened. So mobile GPS data, GPS location helps in and becomes an important digital evidences. We as a user, we on daily basis we use Google Maps to try to reach out to our locations to monitor whether there is a traffic on a particular route or not, or which is the shortest route to reach out a particular location. So Google maintains all data sets. If you open your Google account and if you navigate through your search history, you will find that till from the occasion you have downloaded that Google Map till when you have searched that information, every data is recorded by Google. There is complete information. What are the routes that you have taken? What are the locations on which you have stopped? Which are the days wherein you have not moved at all? So any and every bit of information is available in your GPS data records, location and information. Similarly, internet browsing history and search activities also help in concluding or supporting investigations. There were cases wherein people were found involved in murder cases, and when police have done the investigation, when they looked into their search histories or their browsing histories, they got to know that they were searching or accessing dark webs to see in terms of how they can conclude or how they can carry out their offense without getting noticed. And similarly, though I have not mentioned it here, but even the purchasing which is done nowadays, we do a lot of purchasing using our using our mobile phones, using Amazon, and you're using apps like Flipkart and also if there were cases wherein people have in police while conducting their inquiries, they found that people have procured products which or devices which were used in carrying out crimes using Amazons and all. So through which they can detect, they can find out whether it is the particular offense has happened all of a sudden, or there is a proper planning which was being done to carry out that offense. So these sort of information do become a digital evidence. However, as I mentioned, that any evidence can becomes acceptable only if it is acquired through proper procedure, and that for getting access to that procedure, we need to keep in mind the various laws of land which I have discussed. So once, as in forensic investigations, in digital forensics also, it is important that we present and we prepare our report in clear and concise and accurate manner. So there are some important things which we need to keep in mind while creating our digital forensic report or a forensic report. One is we need to organize and present the findings in a way that is easy to understand for the intended audience. While we may be technically expert, but when we are presenting our findings, we need to ensure that we are presenting it in the easiest way, so that the person on the other side who is not an expert, he gets clear understanding of the report. And it is important that our report gives detailed account of investigating process, including tools and methods that are used, because that becomes important from evidence acceptability point of view. It is important that the report should contain what summary of the evidence that we have collected and how we have we have done the analysis of the evidence and what basis on which we have drawn the right conclusion. Another thing which is important is that we should clearly highlight what are the limitations to our report and what are the challenges which you have encountered. So let's say if while carrying out an investigation, you wanted to talk to 4 individuals or you wanted to conduct interviews with 4 individuals, but you were not able to meet one individual because he was out of country, then your report should mention that while you have carried out and completed all the procedures, but you are not able to meet a particular individual, and because of this reason. So that tomorrow it may not happen that somebody may come and somebody challenges your report and he says that you have not adopted the right procedure for carrying out this investigation. So it is important that a report is well written and it is detailed report to give complete understanding of the offense to the persons to whom this report is being presented, so that they can draw a right conclusion. It should never be the case that while it may happen that while carrying out investigation, you have tons of documents, you have hundreds of documents, thousands of paper documents and evidences. But when you are presenting a report or you're preparing a report, you must ensure that your report should be concise and it should do the talking. It should not be the case that while you have submitted your report and you want other person to in fact review what you have done and how that investigation has been carried out, because if you are doing that, then your report loses credibility and there is a doubt which comes in the mind of the person to whom you are presenting your report. So never let's say you have done a digital forensic report wherein you found that a person is related to a supplier, and so never take your laptop along and show them that this is an evidence basis which I have concluded. You take a printout of that document, you add that document to your report as an annexure, so that your report should be one document which talks about each and everything. Because let me tell you one thing, you are not making a report for the incident, but you are also making a report for future references. And this report may be today it may be the case that this report does not company does not intends to take legal action against an individual, but tomorrow it may happen that company may proceed legally against the individual who has done a fraud or who has committed any unethical act with the company. And your report writing is also essential because there are scenarios, there are cases wherein people against whom action has been taken basis your report, they may initiate legal action against the company, or they may try to defame, saying that they have been unfairly treated and they have been removed from the organization without the principle of natural justice. So to cover to those areas and to take all precautions, you should have a well-written report so that it can be referred anytime and every time whenever that case comes for discussion. So as we know, today is the word of presentation, and presentation for any investigation, whether it is a digital forensic investigation or otherwise, is very important, because once you have done a good thing, you get appreciation only when it is presented well, and whatever you are presenting, it gets understood in a manner in which you want to present. So evidence earlier we were expected only to present report in Word document, wherein only we were supposed to write text. But I have seen lot of digital visualization tools are being used to as part of digital forensic investigation. These tools in a way helps simplifies and reduces lot of text on the reports. And nowadays we prepare report on present PPTs, which help in a way reducing lot of efforts of a person who wants to understand what is written in the report. So effective presentation requires combination of technical expertise and communication skills. Another thing is digital forensic tool, visualization tools, which can be through by way of charts, by way of pictures. And there are forensic software also which help analyze and organizing large data sets. Similarly, evidence, whatever you are presenting, it has to be in simple language and it should be understandable, and we should be avoiding technical jargons and complex concepts. And if you are presenting in court or in any professional setup, I think what is important is that we should also ourselves also should be presenting should present ourselves in a professional manner. And because a fraud investigation is a serious process, and it should not be the case that as a fraud investigation we are going to a court in a torn jean and a round neck t-shirt. We should also conduct ourselves professionally, because that also adds credibility to our findings. Another is a well written and detailed report is essential, that the evidence collected can be used effectively in court of law or other legal proceedings. Having said that, so this is all about what is forensic investigations in terms of what exactly we should be covering and what is the digital forensics. To summarize, what we have learned, what we have discussed so far is that as an accounting professional, we may come across cases, though one is we've been formally entrusted with the task of carrying out forensic investigation or any fraud investigation. But even if we are not entrusted with such tasks, in our day-to-day working also, while conducting audits, we may come across instances wherein we may feel that probably this process which we feel is violated or is not being followed is not a mistake, but it is a genuine attempt to bypass the process. And having said that, if you and tomorrow you may yourself want to report that case to management as a breach of as an intentional breach at somebody's end. So in our day-to-day working as an accountants also, we need to be aware of what are the steps of forensic investigation. So there is nothing which I have told which you guys not know. If you most of the steps which I have covered in forensic investigations are similar to what we do in your audit life cycle also. So if you start your audits, you plan at the start of the year, you do your complete audit planning. And once your audit planning is done, there is a charter which is created. What are the high risk area? What are the low risk area? And while preparing your audits plan also, you seek information from various stakeholders while conducting interviews offline and online, and you try to seek information in terms of what are the areas which they feel are high risk and which should be audited more. And once those are done, then you put your audit into action. And when you put your audit into action, you gather information. And when you gather information, that information comes either in offline mode or online mode, and there are data sets which comes to you, and you apply as auditors also, you apply data analytics to review those data sets, and you find out red flags. And once you have received those red flags which can be related to process gaps, you highlight those to management and seek their information, and you present your report. So typically that piece is, so the ground rule remains the same. However, when we are doing an investigation, we have to think one step ahead, that as an investigator, we cannot accept anything and everything as a process lapse. We need to think that there has to be a mens rea behind it, and there has to be some intentional individual issue and deliberate reasons for an individual to bypass a process. So there, if psychologically, if you want me to, if I would put it that way, so there can be two approaches. One is, one approach of an individual is, I am good, you are good. And another approach is, I am good, but you are not good. So as an investigator, when a case has been entrusted to us, we need to always take a second route, wherein we need to think that probably if a complaint has come against an individual, there has to be a merit against him. I'm not saying that every complaint that gets reported is established, but we need to have a mindset to dig deeper. Then only we'll be able to take to the right conclusion. Now, application of digital forensics, where we can apply digital forensics. One is cybersecurity incidents, wherein people can, wherein somebody has hacked, or we have come across a data breach incidents. We can use cybersecurity to, or even digital forensic to get to track of who are the fraudsters or crooks who have done that activity. Another is fraud investigations, which can be used to trace financial transactions, uncover hidden assets, identify fraudulent activities. I'll give you an example. Let's say we have received a complaint against, going back to the same example, wherein it's been told that individual employee is favoring a particular business partner. Now, while reviewing that emails, if you come across an insurance, car insurance certificate document, and you found that that an employee has purchased a car worth 25 lakh rupees, and though you know that his salary is only 4 to 5 lakhs, so then that becomes a red flag in your mind, because a person who is having a 4 to 5 lakh salary and against whom there is a complaint and he is showing favor to a particular business partner, how can he procure that asset? Now, while reviewing digital evidence, you may try to get details in terms of how he has procured or owned that vehicle, what is the down payment which he has made, whether he has taken any loan to buy that car, or is it purchased by total down payment of 25 lakhs. So these sort of things will help you dig into the merit of the complaints and the allegations that you have received. Similarly, intellectual property theft, digital evidence can be used to identify unauthorized access, copying, or distribution of proprietary information. Let's say there is a particular matter which gets discussed in among board members, and if tomorrow that matter gets published in a local newspaper, the issue which was being discussed, then digital evidence in terms of who all have the access of those documents, who are the persons who have attended those meetings, whether those persons attended meetings online or they have attended those meetings in person, whether any of them have passed on that information to their secretaries and all. So these evidences, which are part of digital evidence, help in taking to the logical conclusion of intellectual property theft case. Similarly, employee misconduct is another area wherein you can use and apply digital forensic. So typically, let's say if an employee is involved in data theft, then while using a review of the emails which he has sent outside the company, you can check out what are those information which he has sent out. And similarly, if somebody is using, let's say, Facebook or other social media sites during office hours, probably you can take out logs with the help of IT, and you can find out, you can create an evidence which will become a digital evidence, and which will help establish an employee misconduct. In addition to this, in criminal investigations also, a lot of digital evidences can be collected to reconstruct a crime scene or identifying a suspect. So all those, so I'll give you an example. About a year back, one of my relative, he came to my residence, and he went for a morning walk. And while coming back from morning walk, somebody has snatched his chain. Now, we immediately called the police, and we in fact reported them. We lodged an FIR before the police. So when the police person came, the first thing they looked for CCTV footage. So then that CCTV footage, so they found that on the road on which that incident happened, there were 6 to 7 houses who have installed cameras outside their houses. So he immediately went inside their house and he collected CCTV footage from all the houses. And so that CCTV footage which he has collected, and he used it to reconstruct the crime scene, and in fact he used it as an evidence, and through which he was able to identify that there were 2 individuals who were on bike, and what is the make of the bike, and they were in fact not able to identify the number because they have manipulated with the number, but they did identify a few aspects that who could be the probable persons who have done that offense. So similarly, in various criminal investigations also, police do use digital evidence, and these digital evidence can come from mobile usage, mobiles, laptops, and even now that we are having lot of smart devices, these smart devices also captures lot of data. So if you have Echo at our home, or if we have Google smart devices at our home, so these devices also get records the communications that you have used. If you are using Apple's phones, Siri also, for that matter, records the data. So if let's say if you have used if you have Google Homes and you have asked Google that probably what is the time, what is the location, what is the area, if I have to reach to, let's say, Gurgaon, and how much time does it take. And if you go to your search history, you will amazed to find that he has stored all the questions which you have asked, and that data is available for you and also for Google to access. Similarly, in civil litigation also, digital evidence can be used to support or refute claims related to contracts, patents, or intellectual property. I'll give you an example here. One of my known to has given his property on rent, and unfortunately for him, the person to whom he has given his property on rent, he was not vacating the property, and he was also not repaying the rent also. So they thought of talking to police, and in fact they requested police to get their house vacated from that tenant. But what happened is that individual, he filed a counterclaim in the court stating that the individual, he found a counterclaim stating that the individual that these guys are trying to roam of the house using illegal means, and as part of his evidence that he is using this house, he provided a photograph which he has taken along with the newspaper. If you see on newspaper, there is a date on which this newspaper is published. So he clicked a photograph of his presence with that date on newspaper to show that he is a legal resident of that property, and they have, and whatever rent he has paid, he claimed that it is not a rent which he has paid, but he is making part payment for acquiring that house. So this is how people manipulate, and in fact, this is a case wherein some crook has used digital evidence to further his cause. Similarly, in incident responses and disaster recoveries also, digital evidence can be used, which helps to identify what is the cause of system failure or data loss and help prevent future incidents. So with this, this is all which I wanted to cover, and in fact, I've spent time 1.5 hours close to in terms of what is forensic investigations, what is digital forensic is all about, and how we can utilize digital forensic as well as various tools to carry out those digital forensics in support of our investigations. And now I request Triveni if we have questions, and Sarab has also joined, so probably we'll be able to help address those questions if there are any.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And one of the questions given by Sir Ashok Kumarji is that for attendance purpose, he's just given his membership number. But the thing is, sir, I think you've made everything so crystal clear that there is no question in the question answer bank. So both of the speakers today had an excellent deliberation, and everything is so clear that no participant has any doubt about any aspect of the forensic audit. So as of now, there is no question in the question bank. And so that was all about from you. And yeah, all the participants, I think, are very much clear about the topic which you covered. I think you covered all the aspects of forensic audit, and it doesn't leave any gray area. So there's no question as of now.
Sure, Triveni, and thank you very much for this session. In case you get any questions afterwards also, happy to revert back to them through your channel. Thank you so much.
Right, sir. Right. So,
Thanks, Triveni. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sarabjit sir. Thank you, Ranjit sir, for being so wonderful speakers. And it's my pride to be mentoring this webinar. Because of mentoring, even I am blessed to have such a wonderful knowledge today about the forensic audit. So I take an opportunity to thank both of you to make us the concept so clear, and all the participants, I think, are very much clear about all aspects of forensic audit. And especially thank to the chairman of this committee, Charanjot Singh Nanda sir, for organizing such a webinar and giving us all an opportunity. So vote of thanks to you both and all the participants for sparing their time and participating in this. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks.